Thanks for joining us on the council.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
We had a lot to talk about this morning. First, let's start off with North Korea. You saw the possibility of another ballistic missile test by North Korea on this Labor Day. This comes a few hours, 24 hours after this hydrogen bomb test. And now the White House saying, expect, an overwhelming military response. What should the response be?
Well, we have to be prepared for that. I mean, we should assume as the United States that North Korea is actually going to do what it says it's going to do, which is they want to annihilate the United States of America and our allies, Japan and South Korea. Now, we have to be prepared for the overwhelming military force. And I do think we're prepared for that. I think Secretary Mattis gives us the confidence. And President Trump, of all the things he's done, I think he's probably done this better than anything. I don't think that sanctions will do much. I think you want to choke them off financially. But I actually heard Abby earlier this morning talk about what is China really worried about? They're worried about this influx of millions of people migrating or being forced to go into China because they're the ones that share the border. But I don't think sanctions will really do much. You have to talk the language of the North Koreans. And that is force.
This is why this issue dealing with North Korea, Jason, has been such a complicated one for presidents going back. You think about George H.W. Bush all the way back then. They have struggled to figure out exactly how to handle North Korea because when you put the options on the table, there are no good ones. And you think about the alternative of going to war. Do we really want a second war in Korea, right? I mean, it's disastrous when you think about it.
I think in retrospect, we did not do enough to choke them off financially, but I do think we have to push them. And when I say them, the Chinese more than anybody else, because the Chinese have the most vested interest. They probably have the most influence. And they don't want to see all these people flee out of North Korea into China.
They also don't want to see the Americans at their border, right? They don't want to see a unified peninsula because that would likely mean the South and the North unite, not on the terms of North Korea. But if you're either going to get a shooting war or you're going to get a trade war. I mean, and honestly, if you either need a trade war with China to incentivize them to actually put the screws to Kim Jong-un to denuclearize, or you have to be willing to preemptively strike. If you don't do one or the other, you're going to get a nuclear North Korea. Can we live in a world where we have a nuclear North Korea with the ability to deliver it, as well as an Iran that can do the same thing, which is on the precipice, has partnered with North Korea. We know that. So do we have the will in Washington, honestly, to do what is necessary to prevent that? Otherwise, we will live in that blackmail world.
Look at it from Kim Jong-un's view. Iran is pursuing a nuclear weapon, and what did the Obama administration do? They gave them $150 billion in a pathway to get there. And so that's the message that has been sent to North Korea over time. Now, we have a new president, a new directive, and hopefully they're getting the message. But we have an imperative to make sure that militarily we can take them out. And you're going to have to probably prove that sooner rather than later.
That would require support from Congress eventually, right? Your colleagues, who a lot of people aren't big fans of at this point, haven't shown much spine, including the Republican leadership. Would they have the spine to back a president who does what's ultimately necessary when the chips are down?
I would love to see them proactively do a resolution before we have to get to that point to show unification on both sides of the aisle that we're behind the president and we're behind the troops and we're behind doing whatever it takes to make sure we protect ourselves and our allies.
Let's talk about DACA this morning, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. Those kids who were here in the United States at no fault of their own based on what their parents did. There are now 800,000 of them living, working here. Many of them, we had some graphics earlier in the broadcast this morning talking about their contributions to the economy, many of them going for advanced degrees. We know that the president has said that he's conflicted about it, that he's emotional about it. We've heard from Sarah Huckabee Sanders and others that the president is weighing this heavily. We now know the reports that he could extend this for 6 months, President Obama's executive order. What needs to happen? What is Congress? It sounds like they're punting it to Congress. Do something. Put some actual legislation together that would take care of this. Is that what's going to happen?
Look, President Trump was elected with an overwhelming mandate. He had 30 out of the 50 states that voted for him, including states like Arizona, who are deeply affected by this. I think the president should do exactly what he campaigned on. Lock down that border, get rid of the rewards and incentives, and I do reject the amnesty. Now, I do think Congress can go back, not a pathway to citizenship. My guess is there'll be some version of legality that they could get to. It sounds like this 6 months, grandfather clause laws is some reality to it. But I do think if they can do the border security and lock down the wall, that would also, I think, bring the Democrats to the table to help hopefully come up with a bipartisan piece of legislation.
Right. I mean, you got to do something, right? Because what's stopping parents from just wanting to bring their kids over here to have a better life? I mean, everyone's going to want that for their child. But you experienced this as well in the state of Utah, dealing with immigrants coming over, and you get that it is such an emotional one. You know, you're dealing with separating families, and you're dealing with young kids, as Clayton said, who came here through no fault of their own. What does the president do about the 8,000 Dreamers that are already here? Because that's where it seems like
800,000.
800,000. I mean, that's where it seems like he's feeling quite conflicted.
Yeah, I mean, look, you do feel for somebody who was 2 years old and their parents brought him over, and do you punish them as well as the parents? But there are consequences to this, and I don't think you give them a reward which leads to citizenship. I just don't believe you should do that. I think there's a conflict somewhat in President Trump's approach in that he said he wants to cut the number of visas in half. Personally, I don't buy that, because I want people coming in through the front door. I want more legal immigration, but I want to get rid of the illegal immigration.
Part of the issue, I'm sorry, Pete, I was going to say, part of the issue here emotionally is that, you know, under the Obama administration, it was sort of encouraged, you know what, come out of the dark. That's what we kept hearing. Yeah. Come out of the shadows, come out of the dark. We're going to protect these children who are here at no fault of their own. And now it's as if they're going to, the question is, could they be punished because they came out of the dark? They listened to the United States government, and now they're going to be punished.
But we're a nation of laws. And that's the way it works in this country. President Obama did a great disservice along the way. First of all, the Democrats have the House, the Senate, and the presidency. They didn't do anything on this issue. It was only a few months before a presidential election that he put this out there. You can't just change the immigration law through an executive order. That's not the way our country works.
Well, he's seeing that now as President Trump is now looking to change it.
President Obama ran on come out of the shadows. President Trump ran on, I remember the forgotten man, the guy who doesn't have a job, who's waiting for VA benefits, who played by the rules and Washington ignores. And now we've got an entire... Paul Ryan and the Democrats and everything, obsessed with 800,000 people here illegally. We can have big hearts and feel for them, but they're here illegally. Do you really believe that this Congress will do something on that before they say build a wall? Yeah, which this president was elected. No, seriously.
Because now Republicans...
Amnesty. No wall means the problem never gets solved. Is Congress ever going to truly be serious about this?
Because now Republicans run the show.
Well,
everything.
Yeah. Well, again, one of my great frustrations is Congress's ability to actually get stuff done.
But does Paul Ryan understand that? Does he understand how disconnected he is from the average voter who says Washington, D.C. does not serve my
But you know what?
interests?
I think the people in the House are terribly frustrated because there are more than 200 bills that have passed in the House of Representatives that are sitting in the United States Senate.
The wall.
But I know. And that's where the funding and the appropriation and that has to happen.
You know what's so funny?
And I do think that's going to happen in September.
I mean, we have senators on, and they say the opposite. You know, we do all this stuff here, and then, you know, they can't coordinate with the House.
Go back to,
you blame each other, right?
Well, they have to go sit in the room together, for goodness sake.
Right.
Think about the health care vote. John McCain, all we were trying to do is have a vote on whether or not to have the debate. That wasn't the passage of the final bill. The Senate, the most deliberative body on the face of the planet, couldn't even vote to have a debate about health care.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's unbelievable when you think about it that you've got two, like you said, Clayton, every lever of power. Yet nothing happens. It shows you how powerful the establishment really is.
Mitch McConnell told us in July that they were going to stay deep into August so they could work out this heavy agenda, only to excuse themselves early. Yeah. They couldn't even fulfill the promise to stay and work in August.
Can I ask you this? Yeah. Does President Trump... his role in dealing with Congress, because that is something he campaigned on. I can bring Democrats and Republicans together. I can get things passed. I know how to negotiate. I'm a businessman. You've been in Congress while he's been president. Yeah. How has he done in that job? Does he need to do more as the commander-in-chief to force Congress's hand?
President Trump has fulfilled every end of the bargain that he was supposed to do. The appointment of a Supreme Court justice that we all like, and he got it passed. That's what he's supposed to do. He is there to sign bills that Congress passes, but he can't do that if Congress doesn't actually put them on his desk. So much better than President Obama, who wouldn't even engage in these discussions. But I see a President Trump who's bending over backwards to try to facilitate that and get bills done.
And we barely talk about the untying of the hands of the warfighters in places like Iraq and Syria, where ISIS is largely, a lot of the ground we've taken back is under this administration because they're finally allowed to fight and win wars. Well, speaking of violence of a different sort, but here as it pertains to protesting, the FBI and DHS recently warned they warned in 2016, during the Obama administration, of increasingly violent clashes with Antifa. So documents are now coming out. Why would it be that they would not warn about Antifa when they knew about it at first?
Well, they really should. They need local law enforcement that is engaged in this process. But I think there needs to be a little bit of uncovering and a little bit of discussion with Homeland Security as why they didn't take a more public position on this. I do credit, surprisingly, Nancy Pelosi, who finally called it out.
Yeah.
It took a little while, but she did get there. And I think everybody on both sides of the aisle should be able to call out violence, for goodness sake.
Attacking police officers.
Yeah.
All right. Jason, great to see you this morning.
Jason,
Thanks.
good to have you. Are you on the
Happy
specialist
Labor Day.
tonight?
The specialist this
All right.
afternoon, 5 o'clock.
We'll see you there at 5.
He-
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jason.
Truly a specialist.
So are you. You're on there a lot, too.
No, but I mean, this guy's a specialist.
All right, let's go over to Jillian Mealy for some other headlines we're following.
You guys are all special.